Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. Today I'm going to talk to you about marijuana, and I will be presenting to the age group of 14 to 16. So, what is marijuana? Well, the history of cannabis dates back to the oldest known record of cannabis as to the Chinese Emperor Shen Nung in 2727 BC. Historians have found evidence of marijuana being used by the ancient Greeks and also across the Middle East and North Africa. Where did it come from, though? The first documented arrival of cannabis in the Western Hemisphere was in Chile after it was imported to be used as fiber products. Where is it found? Typically found in warmer and tropical climates. It can also be homegrown in temperature controlled facilities. In Canada, though, the legal age for purchasing and consuming cannabis products is 19 years old. Dispensaries that have been licensed by the government can legally sell marijuana that has been approved by Health Canada. So there are two compounds of marijuana. There are naturally occurring substances as well as the synthetic components. So marijuana is derived from the cannabis sativa or the cannabis indica plant, and over 400 types of chemical compounds have been found to occur in the cannabis plant. THC, aka delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol, is one of the main components and is typically responsible for the psychoactive response of feeling high. CBD, aka cannabidiol, is also found in the cannabis plant and can balance out the extremes of THC. Now, to the synthetic components, sometimes marijuana can be laced with other substances such as lead, glass, or bacteria. Most commonly, though, marijuana can be laced with other types of drugs to enhance or alter the effects of the marijuana. These drugs can be cocaine, fentanyl, LSD, and even ketamine. Marijuana products that are purchased illegally have a higher risk of being laced with a harmful substance as compared to legally purchased dispensary goods. So the classification of marijuana is a stimulant. THC is a psychoactive chemical that interacts with the brain's main areas by disrupting neuroreceptors. This affects the area of the brain responsible for concentration, memory, and pleasure. So I'm going to have a little true and false for you. So we're going to go in order, and in the order that I put it in, can you put in the chat bar whether you think it is true or false? And so to begin, we're going to start with pot. Is that true or is it false? Awesome. And on the next slide, we'll see who's right and who's wrong. Number 2, Mary Poppins. Is that true or is that false? Number 3, Ganja. Is that a street name? I don't know. Let's see. Number 4, is dope a street name for marijuana? Let's see if it's true or if it's false. Five, KV. Is that true or is it false? Let's see. And number 6, Bud. That's a pretty good one, but is it a street name? We'll find out soon. Ooh, the answers. So, pot, that is true. Although, and so is ganja, dope, and bud. But the two that are false are Mary Poppins and KV. But some other common street slang for marijuana include, but are not limited to, weed, flower, Mary Jane, hash, herb, and the green. So, marijuana can have a lot of impacts on the brain. Some of those include memory loss, problems with coordination, feelings of anxiety or panic, and lack of rational decision making. Marijuana has many negative impacts on the brain despite it making the user feel good. Individuals may feel relaxed, happy, energetic, and may have feelings of euphoria. While these effects may seem beneficial to the user, it's crucial to remember the negative influence consuming marijuana can have on the brain structure. Often, these side effects can be long-term or even permanent. Did you know that it can take up to 1 to 3 hours for the effects of marijuana to leave your system, all depending on the strain and the potency of the cannabis product being consumed? You remember THC? This chemical is stored in the fat cells and can be expelled into the body long after the cannabis substance is consumed. That's why someone may test positive for a drug test even if they haven't used marijuana at all that day. And then we just have a little video here for you. I'm going to make sure that I am muted.
Experience and react to different situations and interactions. Making sure these particular circuits wire in the right way during our teenage years is the brain's own occupational health and safety team, the endocannabinoid system. The endocannabinoid system is a complex and delicate brain system which helps to fine-tune communication within these circuits, ensuring the wiring is assembled correctly, damaged cells are repaired, and the right connections are strengthened for the future. When looking into the effect of cannabis on the brain, scientists found that we naturally produce a brain chemical called anandamide that is similar to cannabis. Concentrations of anandamide are delicately calibrated for it to accomplish its critical role within the endocannabinoid system. This is why, if we add cannabis into the brain, it causes the endocannabinoid system to become flooded with cannabis chemicals. It's a bit like dumping a bucket of salt on your chips instead of a pinch. Or like stadium speakers being plugged into your iPod. Constantly disrupting the endocannabinoid system with cannabis impacts how your brain develops, and in particular, how the mood, motivation, and learning and memory circuits get wired. Short-term memory loss is a common characteristic of long-term heavy cannabis use, because when you use cannabis, less information gets saved as memories. This is why it's harder to learn and remember new information, which can lead to significant drops in school grades. Cannabis can reduce your ability to focus attention, to organize yourself, and make decisions, not just when you're using cannabis, but for weeks afterwards. Cannabis use can also lead to loss of motivation. Heavy users can feel detached and disinterested in things they used to like, such as sports, hobbies, and catching up with friends. It can also lead to low self-confidence that in turn affects your mood, making it more difficult to manage everyday stresses, worries, and frustrations, which can result in prolonged low mood, anxiety, and depression. While these effects are commonly experienced by people who use cannabis regularly, new research suggests that these effects are worse and more permanent for people who start using cannabis while their brain is still developing. This is because the endocannabinoid system plays a central role in the development of your neural circuitry during the teenage years. The developing brain has a pretty good blueprint to work off, but our experiences and interactions with the outside world also help to shape these neural circuits that we will rely on as adults. Your teenage years are an adventure that sets you up for life. Enjoy the ride and look after your brain. It's the only one you've got.
Awesome. And they're absolutely right about that. It is the only brain you've got, so you might as well keep it safe and be responsible. Awesome. And marijuana can be used in plenty of different ways, but some of the most common ways are through inhalation and through consumption. Cannabis flower can be rolled into a joint or a blunt and smoked similarly like a cigarette. And flower can also be inhaled through the use of water or glass pipes. Cannabis can also be used as a vapor and is inhaled through a vaping device. This method typically allows for a higher THC content to be inhaled. Cannabis extract can be added to certain types of food, such as brownies, cookies, or candy, and those are called edibles. Cannabis can also be made into drinks, such as tea. And so now we're going to do a little fill in the blank. And so in the chat bar, if everybody could type in what they think that these words are. Let's test our knowledge and fill in the blanks with some common signs and symptoms of an individual using marijuana. So I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds to a minute to type in and see what you think it is. Awesome. These are the answers. So for the first one, if you typed in slow reaction time, you got it right. And for number 2, if you typed in poor focus, you got that one right as well. As well as inappropriate responses for the third one, such as laughing at the wrong time. Some other signs and symptoms are being paranoid and an increased hunger. When we look at the patterns of use among youth across Ontario, we actually have a really interesting little graphic here. So this graph represents the prevalence of cannabis use among youth across Canada. And Ontario students had the lowest prevalence of use in Canada in 2016 to 2017. Fewer than 1 in 10 students in grades 7 to 12 had used cannabis in the past 30 days. And you can see it on the graph here in orange. It has Ontario, where only 9.9% of students have used cannabis within the past 30 days. But on the other side of that graph, you look at Nova Scotia, 19.7 youth or percentage of students have used cannabis in the past 30 days, which is almost a 10% increase. And did you know that the Cannabis Act, otherwise known as Bill C-45, was passed in 2018? This act allows adults to purchase and use cannabis products legally. Pop quiz. How many people who use marijuana become addicted? And type in the chat bar if you think it is A, 1 in 50, B, 1 in 100, or C, 1 in 10. And I will give you all 10 more seconds to answer that. Awesome. The answer to that previous slide was C. 1 in 10 people who use marijuana become addicted. In summary, the average age of trying cannabis for the first time is approximately 16.5 years old in males and 17.1 in females, from a data set of 15 to 24-year-olds. Cannabis is more likely to be smoked by Ontario youth versus other method of marijuana consumption. The usual source of obtaining cannabis is by being shared amongst friends, usually in social circles or at parties and other situations. Ontario had the lowest rates of cannabis use in 2016 compared to all the other provinces. So, indicators of a marijuana dependence, there are psychological and physiological. It's common for individuals to feel anxious if they cannot access cannabis after becoming dependent on it. They may also experience feelings of irritation and agitation and crave marijuana to help subside those feelings. Physiological dependence occurs when an individual stops using marijuana briefly and experiences minor withdrawal symptoms until they use again. Although there is also something called a tolerance. But what is that? Having a tolerance means that an individual continually needs larger doses of a substance to maintain or increase the high. This happens when one's body eventually becomes tolerant to the effects of a drug. Tolerance typically leads to physiological and physical dependence and addiction. There are a lot of signs when it comes to marijuana withdrawal, and it can vary from individual to individual and also depend on how long or how often an individual was using marijuana. Normally or generally, those signs include irritability and mood changes, weight fluctuations, either gaining a lot of weight, losing a lot of weight, headaches or migraines, difficulty sleeping, and feelings of anxiety or depression, or the worsening of one's mental health. Sometimes an individual might be drawn back to using the substance to lessen the withdrawal effects and begin the cycle of addiction again. But can you overdose on marijuana? It's very uncommon to overdose solely on marijuana products alone. However, using a cannabis substance that has been laced may increase the likelihood of overdosing. There are dangers, though, of prolonged marijuana abuse, such as long-term respiratory issues, which is not good because we all need to breathe, hallucinations, paranoia, rapid heart rate, impairment, as well as addiction or dependence, depending on the substance. An individual using marijuana may go to the ER to relieve uncomfortable symptoms of being too high, such as shortness of breath, severe nausea, and vomiting. Now, it's important if you have developed a dependence on marijuana and you view it as a problem to recognize that problem. A marijuana addiction may not be formally diagnosed. However, there are methods to determine the severity of one's marijuana use. Some questions that may be asked by healthcare or social service professionals to determine if an individual may be addicted to marijuana includes how the cannabis use impacts their daily lives. Some key indicators of a marijuana problem look like choosing marijuana over other hobbies and important events, such as like spending time with your family, going to sports events, going to church. If you're choosing marijuana over all of those, that's a key indicator of a problem. Also, unsuccessful attempts to quit or lessen marijuana use. If you keep going back to that cycle of use and that cycle of dependence, and you leave it alone, but then you come back to it, then you leave it alone, but then you come back to it, that's another key indicator. And also using marijuana knowing that it impacts your daily functioning, such as using it at school or at work and being intoxicated at work, is definitely a key indicator of a marijuana problem. Now, there's also some some risk factors involved with marijuana use. Some of those include family history of substance abuse, peer pressure and influence from your friends, an unstable or abusive home environment. Mental health challenges as well may lead you to marijuana use and be a risk factor. Your socioeconomic status could also be a risk factor when it comes to marijuana use, and as well as lack of resources and or support. Now, let's discuss how can these risk factors play a part in someone using marijuana? Are any of these risk factors related, and how? And so I am going to stop sharing my screen so that I can go and read the chat bar for these answers. So, how can these risk factors play a part in someone using marijuana? And are any of these risk factors related, and how? I will copy this and paste it into the chat for you all.
I would say that a lot of them can intertwine and can be related depending on what their situation. So if they have a history of family substance abuses, oftentimes that can be someone that has a lower social economic status. So they live in lower income neighborhoods per se. They don't have any supports in place as well, so they're more likely to use it because they don't have people that are not using it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Hannah. Okay, let me go back to
Going off of what Hannah said there, I'd say that they're definitely like interconnected depending on like one, if there's like some peer pressure there from some of the like one like community members and also like their peers, and then also as well as in the community they're in, if like kind of a lower socioeconomic kind of place there, it's more accepted and kind of like a norm, then they could happen to be more interested to partake in that kind of like drug there. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Going to go back to sharing my screen. Okay, now can everyone still see it?
Yep.
Awesome, thank you. Now, marijuana and pregnancy. Consuming cannabis products while pregnant can harm the baby's overall development, similar to alcohol. For example, marijuana can lead to a baby having a low birth weight. Breastfeeding while using cannabis products can be dangerous as the THC is given to the baby via breast milk. Overall, to reduce potential harm to the baby, marijuana should be avoided during pregnancy. A mother may have difficulty properly caring for her baby if abusing marijuana. A risk factor for abusing marijuana may be postpartum depression. There are also a lot of medical uses for marijuana. Cannabis can have positive health benefits for some individuals. This is when it is prescribed and monitored by a healthcare professional and individual needs for medical marijuana is assessed. Some reasons why an individual may be prescribed cannabis products by their doctor are to help manage extreme nausea, such as chemotherapy patients, for chronic and debilitating pain, increasing appetite in an individual with chronic illnesses or disease, and also for sleep regulation, which is where CBD comes into place heavily because it has all the relaxing and body feeling without any of the actual feeling of being high. Did you know that Health Canada first approved the use of cannabis for medical purposes all the way back in 2001? There are also, here are some resources and treatment options. There are several resources and helplines across Canada for those seeking support with any substance addiction or mental health challenges. Wellness Together Canada is a free service and it's open 24 hours. Kids Help Phone is also a free service and it's open 24 hours and is a chat service. And then Good to Talk, also open 24 hours, and it's a text-based resource for youth ranging from 17 to 25 years old. Now, crisis and addiction centers are available for severe addiction issues, and talking with a trusted adult or health professional is a great first step. But also, some individuals may need inpatient treatment at a rehabilitation center. Does anybody have any questions? No? Awesome. I'm glad you all got it. Here are my references for today. And you can also see on the handout that I have sent to all of you, you will find all of the information that I have talked about, as well as the resources and treatment options if you feel like you need to use those. Thank you for joining me in this presentation, and I greatly appreciate you all taking the time to sit with me and chat. So, thank you, and have a good one.
Thank you.